So how I really got here is obviously like most kids in America, I grew up loving baseball, right? I wanted to play it as long as possible, wanted to play at the highest level I possibly could. But when I was a kid, when I was young, 8, 9 years old, I really wasn't that good, right? I was average size at that time. I was kind of an early bloomer in terms of growth. Um, and I just wasn't that good a player, but I loved the sport. Big Yankee fan growing up. That was in the heyday of the dynasty, and they were just good every year. And I loved going to games with my father, and that was always my dream. Um, I just wasn't a great player until I started pitching, right? So now I'm 11 years old, and I try out for a travel team where I have a family member as the coach. And it's first time trying out for a travel team. I know nowadays it's a lot more popular, but 10, 20, 15 years ago wasn't what it is now, especially in New York where I'm out of. And 13 kids try out for this team. They take 12, and I'm not one of them. And that was something that really hurt, especially at that age, at 11 years old, 10, 11 years old. Um, and I just felt like this dream of getting to these higher levels was just going to be impossible because of that. And it's something that always stuck with me, even to this day, something that I would often use as motivation. And hit a growth spurt around 12 years old. I was one of the bigger kids on my team, actually. Um, and that's really when I started pitching. Had a pretty good arm, enjoyed it, wasn't a great hitter, decent fielder, and I knew pitching was going to help me get there, simply because half the roster is pitchers at the higher levels, right? You look at a major league roster, you look at a Division I roster, they have 25 guys. Sometimes they have 12, even 13 pitchers on the roster. So when scouts come to games, when people are coming to games, they always want to see pitching. Teams are always looking for pitching. So I knew that that was going to be the path for me. So I literally poured everything into it at 12 years old. Super successful early on, good games, bad games. My father actually got me a pitching coach. This guy, Eric Gluck, he was a Baltimore Orioles scout. So he really helped me with the mechanics as I blossomed. Again, in middle school, I was one of the biggest guys on my baseball team. So I thought that I was going to be like 6'2", 6'3", 220 by the time I graduated high school, when no one in my family is even close to 6 foot. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. I went from one of the guys in the back row on the team picture in middle school to senior year on varsity being like one of the guys kneeling in the front. So we all grow at different times, obviously. But that was just one of the funny things in that case. But I ended up trying out for the modified team in 7th grade, which over here in New York, they have 7th, 8th grade team is modified. And this was before lacrosse and all that nonsense. So everybody was really into baseball in the Northeast. So we literally had like 88 kids for a modified baseball tryout. And, tryout wasn't great. I give the coach credit in some ways because it was one guy running a tryout with 88 kids on a tennis court. But end up not making the team, right, for various reasons. There was a lot of politics involved, of course, which unfortunately does happen at the school levels. And I went in to talk to the coach, who was a social studies teacher at the time. And I explained to him, like, hey, I want to get a college scholarship. I want to play for the Yankees. I have all these ambitious dreams in baseball. And the fact that I didn't make this team, like, really hurts. What more could I have done? And at that time, I felt because I didn't make this team, like my dream was not going to happen. And the guy looked me dead in the eye, and he was just pretty much like, hey, baseball's a great sport. It really is. You could play it the rest of your life. And I play in a men's league now, but don't try to make a career out of it. People around here, they don't get college scholarships, right? Study hard, do well in school, play baseball with your friends. It's a great sport, but these silly dreams of like, well, he didn't say silly, but he pretty much said these dreams are not going to happen. People around here don't do that. So I was like, okay. So at that point, like anybody, you have a path that you're going to go down, right? You could either go down the path of, I'm going to prove this guy wrong and I'm going to use this as motivation and it's going to work. Or you could go the path of, this guy's right, like, I shouldn't do this, and you pack up and you're done, right? The choice is ultimately yours. I took the path of, hey, I want to still make this happen. What does this guy know, right? So I worked relentlessly all through high school, working on my own, trying to work with different coaches, different team coaches. My dad helped me out as much as he could. And I got to a point where I was a pretty good pitcher. Statistically, you could put me up against really anybody in the league, especially on my summer travel teams that we traveled the whole country on the Bayside Yankees. But I wasn't getting looks from top schools, right? And it was mainly because I was under 6 foot. I was right-handed. It definitely would have helped if I was lefty, and I didn't throw hard enough. So even though I was able to get guys out, these scouts and these recruiters, they didn't see me as projectable. So I would literally go to showcases down in Perfect Game in Georgia and throw a 7-inning, 2-hit shutout against a team from Colorado. And there's scouts there, and nobody came to talk to me. Nobody emailed me. I didn't get any interest from that. And I'm shocked because, you're feeling good after a game like that. Like, wow, like what more could I have done? I mean, obviously I could have thrown a no-hitter, but what more did they really want to see? And then you're playing with guys on your team or even guys against you that are 6'1", 6'2", 6'3". They have no secondary pitches. They're throwing 88, 89 at 16, 17 years old, and they're walking guys, they're hitting guys, and scouts are like salivating. Like, I want this guy. And it's because he's projectable, right? And that's something that's a tough pill to swallow because it's like you should just be getting the best players. But in terms of what their job is how can we mold this guy, right? So if they're looking at me at 5'8", 5'9" as a right-hander, and I'm pitching really well, but I'm 83, 84, 85, and I got a few different pitches, and yeah, I'm a competitor out there. They see that I'm doing well there, but in their mind, they don't think it's going to convert to the next level, right? They don't think at a Division I level, somebody of that caliber will have that same success. And, in some ways, they're probably right. They're playing the odds on that. But selfishly, obviously, you think they're wrong, but they're the ones giving you the opportunity, right? So for me, I knew that I had to make myself better in terms of what they're looking for in order to get those opportunities, right? So I knew I had to throw harder because I was a good enough pitcher. I was able to get guys out. I was able to hang with guys that were going to these top D1s, Clemson, all that on my summer team. I was able to pitch better than them in games against the same competition, but I wasn't going to get that opportunity mainly because of pitch velocity and because of size, right? I mean, if I was the same size and I was a lefty and I was 88, 89, it would have been a totally different ball game. But unfortunately, that's not the hand I'm dealt. So you could either complain about it or you can do something about it. So for me, I literally did anything I could. I worked relentlessly to try and get my pitch velocity up. I tried weighted balls. I tried Olympic lifting. I lived in the gym. I ate as much food as possible, tried to gain as much weight as possible. I long tossed. I was looking everything up on YouTube, and some stuff worked, some stuff didn't. And the part that's super frustrating is you start to feel stuck, right? You end up in a position where you have this abundance of information around you where you can look stuff up at will, and you don't know what to do, right? Because you don't know what's going to work for you. Where, this worked for this guy, this worked for that guy, that worked for that guy. And it all works, right? But you need to find what's going to work for you and what you're actually going to follow, right? And that's where most guys fail. They're not consistent. They don't know what to follow. They're changing programs all the time. And that was me. And I didn't have the guidance to really get me there, right? Like, I would listen to coaches. I would listen to teammates. People would give you tips here and there, like, oh, this worked for that guy. I'd watch MLB Network. They'd have Pedro Martinez on saying, like, do X, Y, Z, and then you go try and do it, and it's just weird. It doesn't work for you, and you're probably not doing it right. And I was fortunate enough to then be around some of the coaches and trainers that work with guys at the highest levels. And they're pretty much like, hey, like, this is how you need to throw a baseball. This is how you need to train to support that, and you need to be consistent with it every single day. And that's how we're going to get you to your goal. And I was skeptical at first because how could you not be? Right? You're working your butt off for years on end to try to get here, and someone's turning to you and they're like, hey, all you got to do is these things and you can get there. And you're like, what? Like, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done more than anybody, and I'm still not there. I don't know if this is going to work for me. But what do you have to lose at that point, right? You're going to keep going down that same path? I don't think so. So put my faith in it, tried it, and literally in a short amount of time, I was throwing 90 plus. And that moment for me to break 90 with all that I went through, I mean, I didn't even touch on being in high school and and not making the varsity as a sophomore and getting cut from JV as a freshman when none of these kids even played college baseball, right? Like I was literally the only guy in my high school to even play baseball at that level, at a high level, to sign a national letter of intent, to get a full college scholarship. I was the first guy in my high school in 10 years to get a full college scholarship, signing a national letter of intent in the principal's office. I mean, one of the best feelings of my life, definitely one of the best feelings of my career, especially because of where I was before, where I was getting cut from 10, 11-year-old teams with my family member as a coach, right? Where I'm getting cut from the modified team and the coach is telling me like, hey, no one around here gets scholarships. And then 5 years later, I'm in the principal's office signing a national letter of intent. Like, that is amazing. And to be told that, hey, you're a good pitcher, but you don't throw hard enough. And then at 5'9", I'm throwing 90 plus miles per hour and I'm talking to schools and I'm going to showcases. Like, that right there is the dream, right? Then to play at the NCAA level against guys that are obviously 4 years older than you, sometimes 5 years older than you. You're 18, 19 years old pitching against grown men, right? 22, 23 years old. And my freshman year to win an award at all conference as the only freshman pitcher in the conference to do so, super humbling, right? Like just an amazing, amazing feeling. And then just moving on from there, like not doing the right things, right? Like kind of getting your head a little too big where like, okay, like I'm good. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. You know, you start falling into traps of different styles of training and you get off the beaten path and all of a sudden you get hurt. You know, unfortunately, baseball is one of those sports, especially pitching, like there's a high risk of injury. And if you're reckless in your training and you're doing too much in terms of throwing and training and mechanic drills, it can backfire on you. And I went through that. I had to undergo Tommy John surgery my senior year of college after I was progressively getting worse, right? Sophomore year, junior year, like lost my spot in the rotation, velocity dipping, can't get in front on top of the baseball, trying to pitch through injuries, trying to figure it out on your own, like nowhere near where I was freshman year. And, you know, that still today is a hard pill to swallow. And, you know, when I went through that process and had to get Tommy John surgery as 22-year-old college pitcher, even the doctor said, I went to Dr. David Alchek. At the time, he was the New York Mets surgeon. And he was just like, what's your situation? I'm like, hey, I'm a senior in college. I'm a right-handed pitcher. And, you know, I want to play pro ball. And he's just like, okay, you have to realize, like, the odds are stacked against you right now. And you're not guaranteed to do that. And I said, I know. He's like, so you want to play pro ball or you're going to play pro ball? And I'm like, I'd love to play pro ball. He's like, no. I'd love to play pro ball too. I'm not going to play pro ball. Like, we don't have to do this surgery if you're not going to play again. So if you're telling me that you're going to play pro ball and you're going to make this happen, then let's book the surgery. Otherwise, don't waste your time. And I was like, okay. You know, the guy was really real with me. I said, I'm going to play pro ball and I want to do the surgery. Okay. Handshake. Let's go do it. And we went in the back and I signed the contract and everything and signed up for the surgery. I get the surgery, graduate from college, and now I'm thrown into the real world. I'm rehabbing on my own. And it's like, you know, what do I do? Right? In some ways it's good because you don't have some of the distractions, but in other ways it's obviously bad because you're alone, right? You don't know what you should be doing. You're thinking of what worked before, but look at this new information and what do I do? And again, I was fortunate to start working with pitching coaches and trainers at higher levels and put my trust in them to get me back to where I needed to be, right? And just 15 months post-surgery, like I'm throwing 90 miles per hour again, and pain-free, obviously, which was like the most incredible feeling because of what the last couple of years were, how that transpired. And to be able to be in a situation where you felt like your dream was taken from you for a multitude of reasons, to now be back in that position, and then I end up throwing at workouts for the Philadelphia Phillies and the Atlanta Braves, and I'm competing with guys that are playing at pro levels and throwing 90 plus as a guy that was counted out, like that was the ultimate feeling. And, you know, unfortunately, that's really where it ended for me as a player. And now to have the opportunity to help the next generation and pay it forward and find guys out there that are just like me in my situation, especially when I was in high school and even college, where you have that super good work ethic, you really want to do this, but you literally just don't know what you should be doing and you feel stuck. Like, I'm so blessed and humbled to be able to provide that opportunity for these guys and allow them to live out their dreams by following the guidance that I followed to get me to 90 plus, to get me an NCAA um, award, and to sign a national letter of intent. Like, that is literally the best feeling as a baseball player, especially if you're somebody who comes from a small town, like similar to where I was, small town. Nobody here really does that, right? You're in New York, you're in the Northeast, like you're not in Texas, California, Florida, these baseball hotbeds, and I'm not throwing shade on them by any means. Like, I wish I was there. But, most of us are in these small communities, and there's just not the coaching there. There's not the support there. There's not the mindset of getting you to the next level. It's just kind of like daddy baseball in a sense, where it's like, hey, like, let's play little league and hope it works out, and it obviously never does. But yeah, I mean, it's truly been an amazing journey.